You know, every time people bring up the future of digital assets, I can't help but circle back to two names that just won't leave the conversation: Stellar Lumens, XLM, and Ripple, XRP. These two have been around long enough to prove they're not just hype coins. They've weathered storms, legal battles, skepticism, and even that brutal crypto winter that wiped out dozens of projects. And yet, here they are in 2025, not just surviving, but actually becoming more relevant than ever. And the crazy part is, people still underestimate them. They get so caught up in whatever shiny new token is trending on TikTok or Twitter, but they don't zoom out and realize, wait a second, XLM and XRP aren't meme plays, they're actual infrastructure. These are the pipes, the plumbing, the backbone of what money transfer and settlement could look like in the next 5, 10 years. Think about Stellar. At its heart, it was always about inclusion, bringing people who've been locked out of traditional banking into the financial system without forcing them to jump through hoops. It's not sexy in the same way as some wild DeFi yield farm promising 1000% APY. But here's the thing, it's real. The solving actual pain points. If you're in a region where sending money across borders is either impossible or insanely expensive, Stellar becomes a lifeline. And in 2025, with inflation pressures still high in parts of the world and remittances growing, that story is hitting harder than ever. Now compare that with Ripple and XRP. Their lane has always been the big leagues, tackling the slow, clunky systems that banks have relied on for decades. Swift messages, correspondent banking, settlement times that take days when it should be seconds. Ripple's been fighting that battle for years, and yeah, they've had their share of court drama, but here's what people miss. The fundamentals never stopped improving. Even while Ripple was tied up in legal red tape, they were still onboarding banks, still testing corridors, still proving that cross-border settlement can be faster, cheaper, and more reliable with XRP at the center. And now, in 2025, the conversation has shifted. It's no longer, will regulators shut them down? It's, how will the world integrate these rails? Because at this point, too many institutions have seen the benefit. They can't unsee it. That's what makes me so bullish on this pairing, XLM and XRP. They're not competitors the way people think. They're more like cousins solving different parts of the same problem. Stellar's grassroots, bottom up, Ripple's top down, big money. And when you look at the broader market, especially as governments roll out central bank digital currencies, the need for neutral global settlement layers only gets louder. These aren't optional anymore. They're necessary. And I'll be real with you, 2026 through 2030 is going to be where this plays out big time. We're going to see which projects fade into irrelevance and which ones actually become part of the everyday financial experience. I don't see a world where people are still aping into random meme coins in 2030, at least not in the same way. But I do see a world where you could be sending money overseas, paying for something online, or even settling a government transaction, and the rails under that could very well be powered by XLM or XRP. And that's why I keep saying, don't sleep on them. You know what really gets overlooked when we talk about Stellar and Ripple? Is not just the tech. The tech is incredible, sure, but what makes them really stand out is the real-world adoption that's quietly happening in the background while everyone's distracted with the latest hype narrative. Let's start with Stellar. People forget that the Stellar Development Foundation has been out there grinding, building partnerships that actually matter. This isn't about some random NFT marketplace that disappears after 6 months. We're talking about collaborations with payment companies, fintech startups, even NGOs that want to move aid across borders in a way that actually reaches people faster. That's powerful. Because at the end of the day, if blockchain can't solve real problems, it's just noise. Take remittances, for example. Traditional systems eat up so much in fees that sometimes 10 to 15% of someone's hard-earned money gets lost before it even arrives at home. That's insane. And Stellar has been proving again and again that those fees can be cut down drastically, while also making the transfers instant. If you've ever been on the sending or receiving end of that pain, you instantly see the value. Now look at Ripple. Their strategy has always been different. They're not necessarily targeting the everyday person directly. They're going straight to the institutions that move the bulk of the world's money. Banks, payment providers, remittance giants. And what Ripple offers them is efficiency. Lower costs, faster settlement, less reliance on outdated systems. That's why even with all the noise around regulation, these banks kept showing up to the table. Because when you're saving millions of dollars per year in operating costs, you don't just walk away from that. And here's the thing most people don't realize. The more these institutions adopt Ripple's solutions, the stronger the case for XRP becomes. It's not speculation at that point. It's utility, real usage backing up demand. And when demand is driven by utility, not just hype, that's a foundation that lasts. Now let's zoom out for a second. From 2026 to 2030, the financial system is going to look dramatically different. We're already seeing the rise of central bank digital currencies. Whether people like them or not, they're coming. And when those cbdc's roll out, they're not going to exist in a vacuum. They'll need bridges. They'll need ways to connect across borders. And guess what? That's where neutral settlement layers like Stellar and Ripple come into play. Because think about it, if Nigeria has a cbdc and Europe has a cbdc, and the US rolls out theirs, how do they talk to each other? They're not just going to all magically integrate. They'll need networks that are already optimized for fast, cheap, cross-border value transfer. That's Stellar. That's Ripple. They're the glue. And it's already starting. We're seeing pilots, partnerships, conversations at the government level. None of this is just theory anymore. It's not white papers and roadmaps. It's reality. And that's why I believe that the period between 2026 and 2030 is going to be the true proving ground. It's where all these years of building, surviving market crashes, and pushing through skepticism start to pay off. And you know what's funny? A lot of people are going to look back at this time and say, wow, I can't believe I missed it. I can't believe I ignored Stellar and Ripple when they were right there, building all along. But that's how it always goes, right? People chase the hype, they chase the noise, and they overlook the quiet builders. Then, years later, when the builders win, everyone pretends it was obvious. But if you're paying attention now, you can already see it. XLM and XRP aren't going anywhere. They're digging their roots deeper and deeper into the global financial ecosystem. So here's the part that really excites me when I think about the years between 2026 and 2030. The world is heading toward a tipping point. By then, we're not just talking about speculation anymore. We're talking about real integration of blockchain into the everyday financial system. And for Stellar and Ripple, that's their sweet spot. Let's start with Stellar. Imagine a world where cross-border payments no longer take 3 days and cost $40 in fees. Imagine being able to send value as easily as sending a text message. And not just in developed countries, but in places where banking infrastructure is weak, where traditional systems have failed people for decades. That's the vision Stellar has been chasing from day one, and by 2026 to 2030, the pieces are going to be in place for it to really scale. We're already seeing it. More fintech startups are building on Stellar, governments are testing integrations, and the nonprofit sector loves it because it actually gets money to people fast. If that momentum keeps up, by 2030 Stellar could be one of those invisible layers of infrastructure that most people don't even realize they're using. You know how the average person doesn't think about Swift codes or settlement rails today? They just tap their phone and the payment goes through? That's the kind of role Stellar is gearing up for. It's not about being flashy. It's about being essential. Now, Ripple, their play is a little different but equally powerful. Between 2026 and 2030, I see Ripple becoming the backbone for institutional money movement. Right now, the global financial system is clunky. Banks rely on outdated messaging systems that can't keep up with the demands of a digital economy. Ripple's been pushing the idea that it doesn't have to be this way. And when banks and payment providers finally see the efficiency gains, they'll have no choice but to adapt. By that time, we could easily be living in a world where XRP is baked into institutional settlement flows. And that's huge. Because when institutions move, they don't move in small amounts. We're talking billions and trillions of dollars in daily flows. If even a fraction of that relies on Ripple's network, the ripple effect, no pun intended, is massive. Now, here's the interesting part. Stellar and Ripple aren't really competitors, even though people love to frame them that way. They're tackling different angles of the same problem. Stellar is all about the individual, the underbanked, the underserved. Ripple is going after the institutions, the banks, the heavy hitters, and in a way that makes them complementary. Because if we're going to have a financial system that's truly global, you need both sides covered. So, between 2026 and 2030, I see a convergence happening. On one side, individuals are seamlessly sending money across borders using apps built on Stellar. On the other side, institutions are moving massive sums through Ripple's infrastructure. And in the middle, what do you have? Two networks that bridge the gap, making money as liquid and easy to move as information is today. Now let's talk about adoption momentum. By the late 2020s, blockchain isn't going to be some niche thing anymore. It's going to be standard. Just like the internet was once the strange new tool and then suddenly became the backbone of modern life, blockchain will follow that same curve. And when that shift happens, the projects that survive and thrive are the ones that have been building for real-world use cases. That's exactly why Stellar and Ripple are positioned to shine. The beauty here is that neither of them relies solely on hype. They rely on utility. And utility doesn't fade when markets get bearish. Utility sticks. That's why they've both weathered so many storms in the past. They weren't just riding the wave. They were laying the groundwork for when the wave became a tidal force. By 2030, when you look at the financial landscape, you're then to see Stellar and Ripple woven into the very fabric of it. And the people who understood that early, who looked past the noise and focused on the vision, those are the ones who will be nodding and saying, "Yeah, I knew this was coming." Here's where things get really interesting. When we talk about the future of XLM and XRP, it's not just about technology anymore. It's about the ecosystem around them. Because no matter how great a blockchain is, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Partnerships, regulations, and the state of the global economy are what really determine whether a project becomes essential infrastructure or fades into obscurity. Let's start with partnerships. If you've been watching the space closely, you know both Stellar and Ripple have been steadily locking in strategic alliances. Stellar has this knack for teaming up with organizations that have boots on the ground, NGOs, fintech startups, and even governments experimenting with digital currencies. It's building this web of connections that all point to the same thing: practical adoption. By 2026 to 2030, those partnerships could evolve into something much bigger. Think central bank digital currencies being issued on Stellar rails, or humanitarian aid flowing instantly to crisis zones through Stellar-based platforms. That's not some far-off dream anymore. It's right on the horizon. Ripple's partnerships play a different role, but they're no less powerful. They've been aligning themselves with financial giants, banks, remittance providers, and payment networks. And while that's taken longer to pay off because of regulatory hurdles, the momentum is undeniable. Once the regulatory fog clears, and it will, Ripple's partnerships could scale fast. By 2030, we could see RippleNet or its successor becoming the standard rails for cross-border settlement, with XRP operating quietly in the background, doing exactly what it was built to do. Now, let's talk regulation. This has always been the elephant in the room. For years, the crypto industry has lived in a kind of gray zone where regulators weren't sure how to classify or control it. But by the late 2020s, that won't be the case anymore. We're heading toward a future where regulatory frameworks will be clearer, standardized, and more global in scope. And that's actually a huge win for projects like Stellar and Ripple. Why? Because they've both built their identities around compliance and transparency. They're not trying to be anonymous cash replacements. They're trying to be the bridges that connect traditional finance with digital assets. That puts them in a perfect position to thrive once regulators fully embrace digital finance. Banks won't touch projects that operate in the shadows, but they'll absolutely integrate with networks that are compliant, scalable, and trusted. Stellar and Ripple tick all those boxes. And then there's the broader economic picture. Between 2026 and 2030, we're likely to see the financial system tested in ways it hasn't been before. Whether it's inflation cycles, shifts in global trade, or the rise of new economic powers, money is going to need to move faster, cheaper, and across more borders than ever. Traditional systems can't handle that load. Blockchain-based solutions will have to step in. And when they do, who's already waiting at the front of the line? Stellar and Ripple. The key here is resilience. Even in turbulent economic times, the demand for efficient money movement doesn't disappear. In fact, it grows stronger. Migrant workers sending remittances, businesses trading across continents, governments managing aid distribution. All of them need speed, cost efficiency, and trust. That's the exact problem set that XLM and XRP solve. So rather than being slowed down by economic challenges, they'll actually find more opportunities to prove their value. So when you bring all of this together, partnerships that are maturing, regulatory clarity that's coming, and economic pressures that demand better solutions, the stage is set for Stellar and Ripple to move from being promising projects to being recognized as essential infrastructure. That's the shift we're walking toward in the 2026 to 2030 window. And here's the best part. It's not even a competition between them. They're building in parallel, covering different sides of the same coin. Stellar serves the individual and community needs. Ripple handles the institutional heavy lifting. Both sides matter. Both sides reinforce each other. And by 2030, that dual approach could mean they're not just part of the financial system, they are the financial system's backbone. When we talk about the future of Stellar and Ripple, it's easy to focus just on partnerships or regulation, but the truth is, technology itself is going to be one of the biggest drivers of their relevance. Blockchains aren't static, they evolve, upgrade, and adapt. And between 2026 and 2030, we're going to see XLM and XRP go through a phase of technological transformation that will push them far beyond where they are today. Let's start with scalability. Both Stellar and Ripple are already known for being fast and efficient, but demand is only going to increase. Imagine a world where cross-border payments aren't niche but mainstream. Billions of dollars moving every day, not just through banks but through mobile wallets, decentralized apps, and even government programs. To handle that kind of load, both networks will need to keep upgrading their throughput, ensuring that no matter how high the demand spikes, transactions remain near instant and low cost. And based on their track records, we can expect continuous improvements to keep them ahead of the curve. Another big piece of the puzzle is interoperability. By 2030, we won't be living in a single-chain world. There will be dozens of specialized blockchains, each serving different purposes. The real winners will be the ones that can seamlessly connect with others. Stellar and Ripple both understand this deeply. Stellar has already been working on integrating with other networks and fiat systems, while Ripple has been building bridges into traditional finance. Over the next few years, we'll likely see even stronger interoperability features. Think smooth asset swaps between different chains, easy integration for cbdc's, and seamless compatibility with fintech platforms. That's how you move from being a blockchain to being part of the financial internet. Security is another area where innovation will be critical. As adoption grows, so does the incentive for attacks. Whether it's from hackers, nation-states, or malicious actors inside the system, both Stellar and Ripple will need to stay ahead of threats. This means not only strengthening their consensus algorithms, but also layering on advanced cryptographic techniques. Things like zero-knowledge proofs, secure multi-party computation, or even post-quantum resistance. It's not about whether these upgrades will come. It's about how quickly they'll be deployed and adopted. Then there's programmability. While Stellar and Ripple started with relatively narrow focuses, payments and transfers, the future will likely demand more flexibility. Developers and institutions will want to build customized solutions directly on top of these networks. That could mean smart contract enhancements, tokenization frameworks, or specialized modules designed for finance. By 2026 to 2030, it's entirely possible that Stellar and Ripple will evolve into platforms where entire ecosystems of applications are running. Not just transferring money, but powering lending, insurance, asset issuance, and more. And let's not forget about sustainability. As the world becomes increasingly conscious of energy usage, blockchains that consume huge amounts of electricity will face growing resistance. Stellar and Ripple already have a massive advantage here with their efficient consensus mechanisms. But innovation won't stop. Expect further refinements that make them even greener, aligning with global sustainability goals and ensuring they remain attractive to governments and corporations that want to go digital without increasing their carbon footprint. Finally, think about user experience. For blockchain adoption to truly explode, the technology needs to disappear into the background. By 2030, we won't be talking about using Stellar or using Ripple. People will just send money, buy assets, or receive payments, and under the hood, these networks will be doing the heavy lifting. that requires innovation in wallets, interfaces, and integrations with existing financial apps. Stellar and Ripple are both positioning themselves to deliver exactly that kind of invisible, seamless experience. Put all of this together, and you get a clear picture. Technological innovation will be the silent force that keeps XLM and XRP relevant and indispensable in the global financial landscape of 2026 to 2030. Scalability ensures they can handle demand. Interoperability connects them to everything else. Security keeps trust intact. Programmability unlocks new use cases. Sustainability wins institutional backing. And user experience drives mass adoption. In other words, the upgrades coming over the next few years aren't just about keeping up. They're about cementing Stellar and Ripple as permanent fixtures in the infrastructure of money. In conclusion, the paths of Stellar, XLM, and Ripple, XRP, are steadily converging toward one undeniable truth. They are no longer just blockchain projects. They are becoming the backbone of a new financial era. Their shared vision of frictionless, borderless value transfer places them in a unique position to transform how the world thinks about money. Between now and 2030, the forces of regulation, global adoption, and technological innovation will test them, shape them, and ultimately define their place in the global economy. What makes them especially compelling is their resilience. Despite challenges in the past, both Stellar and Ripple continue to thrive, adapt, and expand their reach. They are not standing still. They are building bridges to banks, to governments, to fintechs, to decentralized ecosystems, and most importantly, to everyday people who simply want faster, cheaper, and more reliable financial access. The future they are moving toward is not a distant dream, but a rapidly unfolding reality. Picture a world where sending money across borders feels no different from sending a text message, where individuals in underserved regions have the same financial access as those in the world's largest economies, where institutions can move value as easily as they move data. That's the world Stellar and Ripple are building, and it's closer than most realize. As we approach the coming decade, the momentum behind these networks will only accelerate. They are set to play a foundational role in the global financial fabric, driving inclusion, efficiency, and trust. The question is no longer whether they will matter, but how much of the future they will define. The next era of finance is being written right now, and XLM and XRP are holding the pen. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay ahead, because the future of money won't wait.